The echoes of the artillery could still be heard. Outside of Pushkin, the fight was still raging on. Amidst the chaos, the unique team of German commandos, comprised of soldiers, art historians, archeologists, and scientists, cautiously made its way to the Catherine Palace. The place had been ravaged by the brutal combat in Leningrad. However, the commandos were hopeful that what they were after was still intact, the centuries-old Amber Room. One way or the other, the German plunderers had to find, dismantle, and carefully pack up the more than 92 square meters of pure amber, valued at over $140 million. The Amber Room. Construction of the Amber Room began in 1701 under the orders of Frederick William I of the Hohenzollern dynasty, and now the King of Prussia. The urge to build the room was to please the king's second wife, Sophia Charlotte. It was to be the main attraction of the Charlottenburg Palace in Berlin. Such a room was envisioned as a product of bilateral collaboration between German Baroque sculptor Andreas Schluter and Danish amber craftsman Gottfried Wolfram, the seasoned builder of King Frederick IV of Denmark. Schluter provided the ideas and the central concept, while Wolfram crafted the masterpiece into something Europe had never seen before. Both men also relied on the help of amber masters Gottfried Thurau and Ernst Schacht from Danzig, who were vital in polishing up the amber panels in 1707 when they were finally presented to the king and queen. The beautiful amber panels had impressive architectural features typical of the time: detailed carvings, gold leaf, gilding, gemstones, mirrors, and even statues of angels and other figures. Still, as the years passed, the priorities changed, and the amber panels were ultimately installed in the Berlin City Palace instead of the Charlottenburg one. However, the marvelous amber panels with the unique Baroque style did not remain at the Berlin City Palace for long. During a visit to the palace, King Peter I, also known as Peter the Great of Russia, was deeply impressed by the Amber Room and expressed his admiration for the Prussian king and his court. Then, in 1716, King Frederick I's son, Frederick William the Soldier King, presented the Amber Room as a gift to King Peter to solidify a Prussian-Russian alliance against the Kingdom of Sweden. The eighth wonder of the world. In a letter to his wife, Empress Catherine, an excited King Peter wrote, quote, "The king has made me the elegant present of a yacht, which was finely decorated, in Potsdam, and the amber study, which I have long desired." The Russian king responded to this gift by sending his Prussian counterpart 55 gigantic statues of grenadiers, alongside a beautiful ivory goblet. The Amber Room was dismantled and shipped to Russia in 18 large boxes, and arrived at St. Petersburg through Murnell and Riga. Although there is no historical evidence of the precise location where King Peter ordered the panels installed, or if he did so before passing away, it is believed that the Amber Room was installed at the Winter House in St. Petersburg. On the other hand, there's plenty of evidence that in 1743, the king's daughter, Tsarina Elizabeth, ordered the Amber Room to be transferred to her new residence, the Third Winter Palace. The Amber Room was used for official receptions there, and European diplomats were constantly amused by the beauty of such a masterpiece. Exquisite details. In 1755, the Tsarina decided to move the Amber Room to the Catherine Palace, or Tsar's Village, in Pushkin. Her Italian designer, Bartolomeo Francesco Rastrelli, was ordered to redesign the Amber Room to fit a larger space. Rastrelli had to order additional amber, shipped from Berlin, to accommodate the 96 square meters of the new floor area. He also added his own Italian touch to the austere German Baroque style of the amber panels. According to the Tsarskoye Selo State Museum, the Italian expert, quote, placed the panels symmetrically on the middle level of the walls, separating them with plasters containing mirrors, and embellishing the room with gilded wood carving. Services were again enlisted to install the panels on the walls. When there was not enough amber, Areas of the walls were covered with canvas and painted in imitation of the stone by the artist Ivan Belsky. Still, there was more to come to further embellish the Amber Room. Under orders of Empress Catherine II, the Amber Room was modified in 1763 with additional amber panels, mirrors, and other decorations to make it even more luxurious. These modifications lasted until 1770, when the new Amber Room was finished. Over 450 kilograms of pure amber were used for this last iteration of the room, including exquisite marquetry chests of drawers and beautiful Chinese porcelain. Hiding the room. In today's currency, the Amber Room in Catherine Palace was valued at over $142 million, and such a marvel did not go unnoticed around the world. The Germans were highly interested in the Amber Room, which many Third Reich officers considered to be genuinely German and belonged in a palace in Berlin. When the Wehrmacht launched Operation Barbarossa, the massive invasion of the Soviet Union on June 22, 1941, the Amber Room of Leningrad was one of the many secondary objectives that had to be captured and dismantled. 3 million Axis soldiers marched into USSR territory and split into 3 army groups: Army Group North, Army Group Center, and Army Group South. Their objectives differed, but they all had 2 goals in common: to go into hostile territory as far as they could and capture as many Soviet prisoners as possible with effective envelopment maneuvers. Although Stalin and the Red Army knew a massive Axis attack was inevitable and tried to prepare a stiff defense, the sheer scale of the invasion caught them off guard. Moreover, the German advance was relentless, and following the army's advance, special units from the rear were tasked with capturing art treasures of all sorts. As the Axis moved closer to Pushkin, curators from the Catherine Palace began to evacuate valuable treasures and attempted to disassemble the Amber Room, but they knew it was impossible without causing irreparable damage. Head art curator Anatoly Kuchernov realized the amber panels had become brittle over time, and attempting to remove them would lead to irreparable damage, which was not an option. Instead, the art experts realized the best way to save the Amber Room from the German invaders was to hide it entirely behind wallpaper pasted over the panels. Looting Leningrad. A layer of cotton wool and wooden boards was added to conceal the Amber Room further. Still, that was not enough to hide the beautiful panels from the Germans. Army Group North and its more than 700,000 men reached Leningrad in early September of 1941 and began pummeling the city with devastating effects. The 900,000 Soviet soldiers and civilians did everything they could to stop the advance. Still, the house-to-house combat was brutal and costly for both sides. When the Axis finally took over the town of Pushkin and secured it from Soviet presence, the rear units with specialists in collecting works of art arrived to inspect Catherine Palace. These Einsatz commandos, who specialized in classifying works of art and historical artifacts, quickly got to work. Such teams often comprised art historians, archeologists, and scientists that worked closely with Himmler's Ahnenerbe, his racial research organization. The Einsatzstab Reichsleiter Rosenberg, a cultural looting organization led by Alfred Rosenberg, was also involved in the cultural plundering of Russian heritage. After a meticulous inspection, the unthinkable happened. The German specialists found the Amber Room. They then tore apart the wallpaper that covered the panels, a task given to art historian and German officer Ernst Otto du Solms-Laubach. In less than 40 hours, the German specialists tore down the Amber Room with as much care as possible and packed it up in 27 or 30 crates. The German commandos also plundered the Rupsha Palace, Pavlovsk Palace, the Peterhof, and the Great Gachna Palace. Once the packages were secured, they were extracted from the burning city of Leningrad and sent to the town of Königsberg in the Baltic. Leningrad would continue burning for 3 more years. Hidden at the castle. The Amber Room crates arrived in Königsberg on October 14, 1941, and were immediately taken to the medieval castle of the Teutonic Knights, which had become a museum. The crates were recorded as item number 200 in the museum. Königsberg's castle director, Alfred Rode, knew every bit of the history of the Amber Room and began preparing a special exhibition of the panels. Rode was an amber expert and could not believe the Third Reich had provided such a marvel. Some of the panels, intricate carvings, and gilded doors were exhibited on the third floor in the castle's south wing. The rest were kept in storage. From November of 1941 until late 1943, the Amber Room was held on display until Rode was ordered to dismantle it and store it again. It was no longer feasible to expose the Amber Room. The tide of the war had changed, and Germany was on the defensive. Allied bombing raids from the west and the east had escalated, and Königsberg was no exception. As 1944 approached, the air attacks increased, and the Amber Room was never seen again. In August of 1944, the British Royal Air Force heavily bombed the Baltic City. The firebombs severely destroyed the city, including the historic Königsberg Castle. Still, the trail of devastation did not end there. When the Soviets approached to lay siege to the city's remains, it was subjected to heavy artillery barrages before launching the infantry and armor to assault the defenders. Lost with the Wilhelm Gustloff. Officially, the trace of the Amber Room was lost following the Royal Air Force's August 1944 bombing raids. Historians believe the room was lost during these devastating attacks. Still, rumors have always swirled that local townsfolk witnessed secret crates taken aboard the massive Wilhelm Gustloff transport ship before the Soviet attack on Königsberg. Reportedly, the Amber Room was loaded on the German ship in early January of 1945 to save it from the chaos. Unfortunately, the ship, which was carrying over 10,000 people, was sunk by Soviet submarine S-13 in the Baltic Sea. Still, post-war archaeological research of the wreckage has not found any remains of the Amber Room. When Königsberg's museum director, Alfred Rode, was interrogated about the Amber Room when the war ended, he said nothing. If there was any authentic evidence about the Amber Room's fate, Rode made sure to take the secrets to his grave. During the early days of the Cold War, more theories arose, some alluding to the disappearance of the Amber Room over a lake in Lithuania. Other investigators pointed out that it was not destroyed, but rather hidden somewhere under the tunnels of a destroyed Königsberg. Supposedly, a group of German art detectives got a tip about a civilian trying to acquire a supposedly genuine piece of the Amber Room in 1997. When they broke into the seller's office, the officers were shocked to find one of the Amber Room's mosaics, the Italian stone mosaic Feel and Touch. According to the detectives, the seller had inherited the piece from one of his ancestors, who had helped pack up the Amber Room. The piece was immediately sent to the Russian government, which had begun building a replica of the Amber Room in 1979 at Tsarskoye Selo. The reconstruction was finished 25 years later and is valued today at $11 million. It was inaugurated by President Vladimir Putin and then German Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder. This new reproduction of the Amber Room is on permanent display at the Tsarskoye Selo State Museum Reserve outside of St. Petersburg. Thank you for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our other Dark Documentaries channels to find more strange mysteries about the global conflicts of the 20th century. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to be notified of our newest content. Stay tuned.